Nobody messes with someone who answers like this, and it's not because they shout louder, it's because they answer smarter. Think about that person who provokes you, interrupts you, talks over you, and somehow seems to win just because they're making noise. Now imagine the opposite. You don't raise your tone, you don't justify yourself, you don't get tangled in their drama. You say one sentence, the right one, the cold one, the intelligent one, and suddenly something uncomfortable happens for them. They lose the ground, they lose control, and they run out of words. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 smart replies that shut anyone up without insulting them, without losing your class, and without giving away your peace. They work with a boss, a difficult family member, an arrogant coworker, and especially with someone who's trying to manipulate you. And listen to this. Reply number 3 doesn't just stop an argument, it flips the entire dynamic because it forces the other person to respect you or stay out. Stay until the end, because once you start using these lines with calm confidence, you're going to notice something strange. People start measuring their words around you. Here's the problem most people never realize. They think the goal is to win the argument. So they fight for the last word. They raise their voice, they explain too much, they prove too much, they perform too much. And meanwhile, the other person is not arguing to understand. They're arguing to dominate. That's why the loudest person often wins in the moment. Not because they're right, but because they're willing to be chaotic. Stoicism offers a different kind of power. Not the power to crush people, the power to remain unshaken. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about events. In other words, the moment you react automatically, you give someone else the steering wheel of your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote about keeping your inner ruling faculty steady, like a rock that the waves keep hitting but never move. Seneca warned that anger is a kind of temporary madness, and madness always regrets what it says. So these aren't comebacks, they're boundaries spoken out loud. They're controlled sentences that protect your dignity and expose disrespect without needing aggression. And one more thing before we start. These replies only work if your tone matches your words. If you deliver them with rage, they become sarcasm. If you deliver them with fear, they become permission. The magic is calm, the magic is precision. Reply 1. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. Some people are addicted to volume. They think if they're louder, they're stronger. They interrupt, they talk over you. They flood the conversation so you can't even finish a thought. And they expect you to do one of 2 things: submit or explode. If you explode, you've entered their arena. This line is how you exit that arena while staying standing in the room. Imagine you're in a meeting. You're trying to explain a plan, and someone keeps cutting you off with a louder tone, like they're trying to win by drowning you out. Or imagine a family argument where one person turns every topic into a shouting match. They're not aiming for truth, they're aiming for control. You pause, you keep your posture relaxed, you look at them without hostility, and you say, clearly, I don't need to raise my voice to be right. That sentence does something subtle but powerful. It forces a comparison. It invites everyone watching to notice the difference between emotional noise and mental strength. It also tells the other person, you can scream all you want, but I'm not joining you down there. And if they keep yelling after that, they look smaller. Because now it's obvious, the shouting isn't confidence. It's insecurity trying to wear armor. Epictetus warned that the person who can't control their mouth becomes a servant of their impulses. When you say this line calmly, you're demonstrating the opposite. You're showing that your emotions don't drag you around by a leash. You're not arguing anymore. You're setting the temperature of the room. Reply 2. The way you're speaking says more about you than it does about me. Some people don't attack your ideas. They attack your dignity. Sarcasm, mockery, little humiliations disguised as jokes. They try to make you feel small so you'll either get defensive or get desperate for approval. This line is a mirror. The way you're speaking says more about you than it does about me. Notice what you're doing here. You're not calling them names. You're not begging them to stop. You're not trying to prove you're worthy. You're simply refusing to absorb what doesn't belong to you. Imagine someone throws a cutting remark at you in front of others. They want you to blush, to react, to stumble, to defend yourself. And instead you hold a quiet gaze and deliver that sentence like a diagnosis, not a fight. Now the insult loses oxygen, because insults need a target that accepts them. When you don't accept them, the insult becomes what it always was, a display of the speaker's character. Marcus Aurelius wrote something like this in spirit. The best revenge is not to be like the person who wronged you. This is you protecting your character. You're refusing to let their ugliness enter your voice. Here's the deeper Stoic lesson. You can't control what they say. You can control what you make it mean. If you treat their disrespect as proof of your value, you suffer. If you treat it as proof of their inner state, you stay free. And freedom is what they can't stand. Right here, before we go to reply 3, take a second and make this practical. Pick one of these first 2 lines and imagine the next situation you'll use it in. Visualize your tone. Visualize your face. Calm, steady. No need to win, just control. If you want more scripts like this, subscribe to Stoic Spring and turn on notifications. Your life gets better when you build the habit of protecting your inner peace and growing in emotional maturity, and that's exactly what we train here. Now, reply 3. This is the one manipulators hate. Reply 3. We can talk when we can do it with respect. There are conversations that aren't conversations. They're traps. The person interrupts you, twists your words, raises the tone, pushes you to react, and then when you react, they blame you for the chaos they created. That's a manipulation loop. Most people stay in the loop because they're afraid that leaving means losing. Manipulators love that. They want you locked in. They want you emotionally engaged because an engaged target is easier to steer. This line breaks the loop instantly. We can talk when we can do it with respect. Say it like a boundary, not like a complaint. Not, please respect me. Not, why are you like this? Just a simple condition. To imagine you're discussing something important and the other person starts attacking your tone, your personality, your motives. They interrupt every sentence. They escalate. They want you to chase them, to defend yourself, to beg for fairness. You stop. You breathe. You say, we can talk when we can do it with respect. Now watch what happens. The axis of the conversation changes. It's no longer about the topic. It's about the minimum standard required for the topic to even exist. This is what Epictetus meant when he said you can't control other people's actions, but you can control what you consent to. You're withdrawing consent from disrespect, and that's why manipulators hate it, because they can't keep escalating without exposing themselves. If they continue being disrespectful after you calmly demanded respect, everyone can see it. If they suddenly become respectful, you just force them into your frame. Either way, you win without throwing a punch. One warning. Don't over-explain this line. Don't add a speech. Don't argue about why they should be respectful. The power is in the simplicity. It's a locked door. You don't debate with someone at the door. You decide whether it opens. Reply 4. I'm not going to continue this conversation. There's a moment when it becomes clear that the other person isn't listening. They're not curious. They're not trying to understand. They're trying to win, even if it costs your dignity, your time, and your peace. That's the moment most people ignore. They keep talking because they want justice. They want the person to finally get it. They want closure. But you don't get closure from someone who feeds on conflict. This line is your exit. Clean, final, controlled. I'm not going to continue this conversation. Not aggressive, not dramatic, not apologetic. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't negotiate. It ends the exchange. Imagine someone keeps poking you, pressing you, baiting you. You feel your patience shrinking. You can feel the heat rising in your chest. And you know if you stay for 5 more minutes, you'll say something you'll regret. That's your cue. You look at them with calm, you say, I'm not going to continue this conversation, and you disengage. Marcus Aurelius had a practice of reminding himself that he could choose his response, and that no one could harm his inner self without his permission. Seneca wrote that the greatest power is to have power over yourself. This is that power in action. Leaving a toxic exchange is not weakness, it's leadership over your attention, because your attention is a currency, and when you give it to chaos, you pay with your peace. Reply 5. That's your view. I respect it, but I don't share it. Not every disagreement is with an enemy. Sometimes it's someone close, a friend, a coworker, a family member. They may even have good intentions, but they push, they insist, they pressure you to adopt their perspective, and if you resist, they treat it like disrespect. This line is how you stand your ground without turning it into war. That's your view. I respect it, but I don't share it. It says, I heard you. It says, I'm not attacking you. And it also says, I'm not moving. Imagine someone is trying to convince you to make a decision you don't want to make, or they keep judging your choices, pushing their beliefs, framing you as wrong for not obeying their worldview. You can either argue point by point, which never ends, or you can surrender, which costs you. Or you can use this. You say it slowly, respectful tone, no smirk, no defensiveness. And here's the beautiful part. It leaves them with nowhere to attack, because you didn't insult their opinion. You simply refused to adopt it. This is emotional independence, and emotional independence is rare. Seneca wrote about how being enslaved to the approval of others is a miserable way to live. This sentence is a key that unlocks that prison. It's you saying, I can honor your right to think differently without handing you control over my mind. Now let's make these 5 replies feel like weapons you can actually carry. The words matter, but the delivery matters more. When you say reply 1, your goal is to lower the temperature. When you say reply 2, your goal is to reflect, not retaliate. When you say reply 3, your goal is to set a standard and expose intention. When you say reply 4, your goal is to protect your energy and end the loop. When you say reply 5, your goal is to hold your position without disrespect. And one more thing, you don't need to use these lines every time. Sometimes silence is stronger. Sometimes a pause is the reply. Sometimes the most intelligent answer is walking away without announcing it. But when you do speak, speak like a person who owns their inner world. Let's recap them, because repetition turns phrases into reflexes. I don't need to raise my voice to be right. The way you're speaking says more about you than it does about me. We can talk when we can do it with respect. I'm not going to continue this conversation. That's your view. I respect it, but I don't share it. Don't underestimate what these do to people who rely on pressure. When you stop reacting the way they expect, you change the script. And when you change the script, you change the power dynamic. Over time, something interesting happens. People start approaching you differently. Not because you became aggressive, but because you became harder to manipulate. You became someone with presence, with control, with a calm that can't be purchased. If this video helped you, subscribe to Stoic Spring and turn on notifications. Your life improves when you build the habit of protecting your inner peace and growing in emotional maturity. And that's what we practice here every single day. And now, tell me in the comments, which of these 5 replies are you going to use first, and in what situation? I read the comments, and I want to know what you're facing.